Hi, it's iFell3 here. For a few years I was buying Christmas trees, hoping to keep them as my daughter grew up. I liked the phrase of fur. I even brought seeds and tried to propagate them, but these disliked being kept in a pot. Then I would forget to care for them in the coldest months of winter and the hottest weeks of summer, and they would die. What makes this alternative Christmas tree different is that you can have it in an array of shapes. First of all, I had to check the hardware stores to find some timber and to see what sizes were available. Wickes had some plain square edge spruce, typically used for Christmas trees. Next I placed the dimensions into SketchUp and drew a Christmas tree sort of shape. Each step was 5 mils less than the previous one on each side. As you get closer to the top of the triangle, I had to minus a few steps to allow for the pole to go through the middle. With the shape cut out, I then looked at creating a base. I decided for cost reasons to use a 70 by 70 mm square fence post. It worked out to be cheaper and also seems like it's a reasonable size for the rest of the tree. Whilst I was at it, I looked about supporting the structure and decided to use some flat bar stock for the legs. I put all the dimensions I needed onto a spreadsheet and printed off a sheet of paper so I could keep track of what I was cutting. I tried to use a junior hacksaw for this, and found the bigger saw was quicker and easier. I started off cutting the longer sections and kept the shorter offcuts, which I could cut down further for other sections on the list. Sometimes I got lucky and some pieces were the exact same size as needed. Removing annoying sticky labels was a bit of a pain, but I found if I sanded the residue, sawdust would get stuck in the gum of the sticky labels, allowing it to be scraped with the back of a breakaway craft knife. Next I marked up the centre line for the X and Y planes, and yes, I could have used my adjustable square, but that was stuck at the bottom of the pile at the back of the garage. I used a 20 mm Forstner bit and cut a hole through the middle of the planks for the pole to go through. The rear of the right piece let some tear out, but I soon found out by leaving a little bit of wood in the drill table helped to stop this. Ideally, I should have used a piece of wood underneath for a little bit more support. Next I drilled out a pilot hole in one section for the decorations and lights to hang from. I used this to transfer the hole to other sections of the wood. Then countersank both sides with the cheapest bit I had on hand. I then sanded the end grain to get rid of any rough material and smoothed all remaining edges. Then sanded smooth all 336 holes. Next I burnt all the holes. I kinda like this process, it reminds me of how people used to char the ends of their arrow tips to strengthen them. I also like how it gives the character to the wood and sort of breaks it up a little. With the smaller holes I found jamming the flame straight through the hole gave the best results. With the larger holes in the centre, going in from one side but aiming for the back of the hole gave the cleanest results.
Oh, bonfire, nearly ready to go.
I then wiped away excess charring and sanded, checking all parts for quality control. At some point I'll make a video of this dog grooming blower, but it's a brilliant piece of kit. It's great for blowing out all the dust in your car, all the dust that goes into the garage. It's just powerful. I tell you what, when this goes together next year for my daughter to put together, she's going to have a busy time doing this. Before staining the wood I needed to sort it out into piles so I could divide it into 4 colours. The solvent-free dye I got from eBay, I had never used it before and I was a little bit dubious. but it was half the price, so I sort of decided I'll risk it. I tried to apply it with a rag to start off with, but I found it soaked up way too much dye. In the end, brushing it on was the easiest way. I gave them 2 coats all in all, and I was happy how the final product turned out. I knew this would only look better with 2 coats of beeswax. Then I marked a centre hole in the fence post and started it off with the Forstner bit to get a straight boring hole. Followed up with using the spade bit to get the depth. Ideally I should have sanded the end grain first. Next I charred the inside hole to smooth and slightly harden it. The legs were cut halfway through the angle grinder to make bending the edge a little easier and to give less radius at the bend. Squaring up the piece in a vise and then bending to 90 degrees for the first one, and considered any movement from welding and then moved this onto the other pieces. Two of the pieces broke where I cut it when bending them to 90 degrees, so I had to use the previous ones as a supporting fixture and clamp them to it. Next I ground down the corners, rounded the ends, smoothed down all the edges and sanded off the mill scale. On 2 sides I wanted the fixtures to be positioned the same size and the other 2 were about an inch or so difference, higher or lower. This was kind of because if I had too many holes going in at the same point, it might have created a reek area where the tree's trunk was, if they was all at the same height. This way it gives as much strength as possible with as little chance of splitting. Rounded all edges of the trunk and then test fitted the legs. Bolts had to be shortened to allow the centre pole to slide through. My original plan was to have the bolts to actually screw into the centre pole, but by the time I made the hole big enough, it would have took quite a bit of material out of the strength of the centre pole. A quick assembly to see how long the centre pole needed to be and then cut to length. I then charred the trunk holes, forgetting there was a straight through hole straight to my hand. Cleaned up the legs with some brake cleaner and then heated the pieces. This allowed the metal to sweat, displacing any moisture in the metal. In the end I used my stove to apply most of the heat, followed by the blowtorch to bring it up to temperature. Check the links in descriptions for better examples of doing this method. I then wiped it with boiled linseed oil and reheated it until it changed colour. Then applied the final top coat of oil and left to dry. Depending on the temperature will depend on the final colour of your piece. These turned out to have slight honey sort of colour, where overheating gives a blackish finish, like the centre pole. I used some copper coated TIG rods to attach the decorations. To start off with I wanted a fancy sort of bow shape, but realising that I couldn't replicate this again and again, I ended up just using a sharp V shape. In the end I had to buy the rattan star because, like say, time was ticking on. I got this from Amazon with the LEDs on as well, and it cost about £6. Other ones had them for about £12 to £15. I don't know why this one was £6. I think it might have been a typo error, so I quickly bought now. Then I took a piece of wood that I had laying around that I made ages ago to use as a fire stick when I was more into bushcraft stuff. I took the top off and squared around the bottom pieces, then rounded it to fit inside the centre pole. I ain't got a clue what type of wood this is, but I think it might have been like a yew or something similar to that. To give the stars a spring fit, I had to cut up some strips of leather. I didn't use the tapering method when putting the leather around, as you would do if you was, say, doing an axe handle. And the panel pins that I kind of used were bending with the hardness of the wood. In the end, I just used the panel pins as tacks, snipping off the ends and hammering them flat. This was done Christmas Eve when I was picking up my daughter later on that day. I finally got it finished and gave her choice of orientation of the branches. I have to admit I was quite happy with the outcome. I just wish I didn't leave it so late. What I didn't realise at the time was where I had the holes to put the decorations into, you could actually feed the LEDs from Christmas tree lights going around, which gave it kind of like quite a cool sort of touch, I thought. So this isn't my design. I've seen one of these knocking around on the internet when I was looking for alternative shaped Christmas trees. The only thing I could say that is really mine is charring it, and also the legs and drilling the holes in for the decorations to hang from, and also the Christmas lights to go into. I feel free, over and out.